Hey everyone, welcome back to Electoral Dysfunction, the show where comedians and experts talk about the news of the week from the safety of their quarantines. We got a great show for you today, but I believe, we have some breaking news coming out of Florida right now. Governor Ron DeSantis has reopened the beaches as of Friday, and we have some breaking news. Ned Thorne, star wipe us down to Florida. Joining us now from Florida with the report on the beaches is our own correspondent, Amanda Nicastro. And Amanda, you're not at the beach.
No, Tom, I am not. I don't know if you know this, but those beaches were reopened today. So I'm not going there because there will be literal germ factories. I decided to go to some place that was actually closed and properly quarantined. And right now that's the Magic Kingdom. I am happy to report that I am here basically by myself, and it is the safest and happiest place to quarantine, Tom.
Well, that's good for you. We did send you down there for a report on the beaches, so this is not helpful to us, but I'm glad you're safe. So it's just you. You're alone in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, basically, except for, the 7 dwarves and, correction, 5 dwarves.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, Doc was called to the front lines, Tom, as a healthcare worker and provider. And I'm sad to report, Bashful just didn't make it, Tom.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, it's very sad. It's very sad. You'd think Sneezy, if he was to catch the COVID, would be the one, but no. Turns out those are really just allergies. He's got an immune system like an ox, Tom. Grumpy. Not well suited for social distancing. You'd think he'd be the one who'd be like, leave me alone. I don't want to deal with anyone. But no.
You would think that.
No, he just keeps pacing up and down Main Street, muttering to himself, I just want to give the dopey one a hug. I just want to give the dopey one a hug. Yeah.
That is not what I expected at all. Across the board from this report, how's everyone else doing?
And Tom, can I tell you, who who is hoarding toilet paper here?
Who's hoarding toilet paper here?
Snow fucking White, Tom. Snow fucking White. What? I mean, come on. That is some privilege, okay? That is some some Snow White privilege, right? I mean, we've got Dumbo over here taking massive shits, 2 rolls of toilet paper to his name, and she's sitting up in the castle pretty with her hoard of toilet paper.
And that's not even her castle. That's Cinderella's castle.
No, she took it, Tom. She took it because she needed a better place to quarantine. More like bitch white, if you ask me.
Yikes, shots fired. Because we shouldn't be surprised. Her entire story is about her stealing someone's home, so that is what she does.
Right.
So you have nothing, though, report-wise on death rates or on bending the curve sickness, hospitalizations, intubations in Florida as a result of these new orders for us?
No, Tom. When I made the decision to come here, I made the decision to make this a vacay quarantine. And when I'm on vacation, I like to think happy thoughts, Tom. It's my happy place, my laughing place, if you will,
I won't.
But, yeah.
Again, we decided to send you there to get news. This has not been helpful at all, but I'm glad that you're having a good time down there. You doing all right? What are you going to do for the rest of the day?
Oh, well, I'm going to break into some more churro vendor carts. Those are delicious. Mix my own Dole Whip. And later this afternoon, I'm going to head over to MGM Studios, Rise of the Resistance, Party of One, Tom, several times.
Well, good for you. This has been a really worth our time report. Amanda Nicastro, thank you for checking in. The rest of you can watch her show, Lifestyles of the Quarantined and Restless, on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 12 noon on the Frigid New York Facebook page. Amanda, thank you very much for that report. Thank you for joining us. Ned Thorne.
Oh, Tom, may I add? We hope you have a magical quarantine.
Oh, man. Ned Thorne, star wipe us to the panel. Join us in welcoming our panel. First up, he's a very funny comedian, host of the Political Orphanage and Alienating the Audience podcast. Andrew Heaton is here, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, Andrew, how are you?
Hello. Life couldn't be any better right now, Tom, and it's a pleasure to be seeing you and everybody else again.
Oh, it's a pleasure to see you too, and glad to see you on the original Enterprise, I believe. Is that right? We're going
Yes,
all
it's
the way back.
it's the original one. I would have picked the Excelsior, but apparently they don't have all of the ones that I requested. Although by the end of the quarantine, 4 years from now, I think there's a good chance they will.
Well, I mean, for all of us Excelsior fans, that's going to be a big one.
Mhm.
Thank you for joining us. Also with us, very funny comedian, part of the Pitts sketch team, Kennedy's Mistress, and with Change.org as well, Sriya Sarkar. Hey, Sriya, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. How are you holding up?
I'm doing well. I feel like I'm nailing it with these introductions. I'm really getting all of the necessary info in there in a way that is clear to the audience.
10 out of 10. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Shri. Also with us now, boy, she moved from the Magic Kingdom over to Hollywood Studios fast. Comedian, writer, host of Lifestyles of the Quarantine and Restless on Frigid NYC, Amanda Nicastro back with us. Hey, Amanda.
Cheers. How are you?
Doing all right. I'm sure Rise of the Resistance was fun. And
Oh, it was great.
finally, editorial columnist for the New York Daily News, my buddy, my pal, my lifelong chum, Robert George. Robert, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I am having so much fun. It's practically contagious.
Oh man, I can't believe we've done 5 of these shows and it took you to this one to make that joke. So
I'm being more patient and subtle now. It's my New Year's resolution.
Right. Well, you can't use up all those puns in quarantine. You got to start rationing them at some point. Otherwise, the government will take them away.
This is true. This is quite true.
So let's talk about the week. This week, a debate blew up in the political sphere about whether or not it is time to reopen our country. The president tweeted yesterday, liberate Minnesota, liberate Michigan, liberate Virginia. Interestingly enough, did not say liberate New York, his hometown. And we're starting to see a little bit of push on the internet, hashtag reopen America. We're seeing photos of Times Square empty, presented to us as if this is like the downfall of society, that, really a free country should be willing to let 1 million Americans die rather than close the Times Square Applebee's or Olive Garden, particularly that Applebee's, which, due to the sign in the window, best happy hour in the city. How are we feeling right now? The president seems very strongly committed towards starting the reopening process. We're behind his Easter deadline, but he's calling for it. Meanwhile, governors across the country, I believe the governors of Connecticut, New Jersey, New York have formed and maybe Massachusetts as well, have formed a pact on reopening on a similar schedule. Likewise, some of the Midwestern states, we saw Ohio, which is a Republican governor, but Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Illinois, all have Democratic governors, are all sort of a similar pact of what conditions they'll need, which is, I believe, somewhere in the realm of 14 days of trend lines going consistently down across not just your infection rate, but your hospitalization rate and a few other things. What do we think? Is it time to reopen America?
No.
Amanda
Actually
Castro
not.
with the hot hand.
Yeah, what she said.
Oh.
I also don't understand why those 3 states. They don't seem to make any logical sense to me. Did I miss
What
something? Why are we liberating Virginia, Michigan, and Minnesota?
No, okay, yeah.
Because they're swing states. That's why.
Well,
It's
a couple of different reasons. It's my friend Mr. Heaton over here is correct. They are swing states, though Virginia is basically is more blue purplish than it is actually purple. It hasn't,
Right.
Well, then don't open it then.
Yeah, well, there you go. And Minnesota hasn't. Minnesota's been part of the blue wall since 1980. Since 1988, it did not flip the way Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin did last time around.
But it was much closer. It was, I think, 49-46, which is normally.
And there have been a number of reports that the Trump campaign has been targeting Minnesota as a possible grab away from the Democrats. So that is definitely that's definitely part of it. It's also he's also been having a running feud with Governor Whitmer from
that woman from Michigan.
That woman from Michigan, and then of course you've got Ralph Northam, who is the reason he's being targeted, if you will. They've passed they've imposed some restrictions on gun use and gun handling and so forth. So while those 3 states were all called there was a Liberate order went out. The Virginia got a special extra shout out of Liberate Virginia. They're coming for your Second Amendment rights. So it's
hashtag 2A.
Can I the woman from Michigan? That's the governor, the Whitmore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is
Gretchen
that
Whitmer, not Gretchen Wiedner, which I have mixed up.
Well, I was gonna ask. There's the mean mayor. No, I guess it wouldn't be mean mayor memes. Have you seen that? Or it's mean governor? Oh man, now I'm totally botching this. But there's a bunch of memes of some mayor or governor or some woman, and they're hilarious. But I mean, they're like supportive of her.
I believe that's Mayor Lori Lightfoot, I think, of Chicago, who has been
I'm way off base.
That's okay. She had the meme where she said to Chicagoans, like, you waited 100-something years for the Cubs to win a World Series, you can stay home.
I love it.
Like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it seems to me that the genesis of this Let's Restart has been like mainly because social distancing is working and things are starting to stabilize a little bit, and we have a lot of people who are like, things are slightly better, done, it's over, we did it, let's get out of here.
So can I want to interject, like, it seems to me
Andrew,
there's worst case and best case scenarios here. The best case scenario is that we're able to save the economy and nobody dies, and I get back to having a quasi-normal sex life. That's the best case scenario, right?
For the country, for the entire
country.
The country
my
is
libido,
counting on Andrew Heaton.
You know what? My libido has charted with GDP for 6.5 years now. So, like, the better I'm doing, the better you're doing.
Oh, boy.
The worst case that we either open up the economy and we go through all of this again because it spirals out, right? So people die unnecessarily. But the flip side of that would be that we ruin the economy and a bunch of people get it anyway. Like,
what about your sex life if we reopen too? I think is the worst question.
Andrew would not.
Well, we got to time it to where people are at peak horniness before we open it for my sex life, because I want to basically have like a New Orleans style parade of sex with this happens. But I'll say that I do think I'm glad that people are talking about the economy, in that I view, like, I don't have like a list in my office of like old people equally expendable. Like, I'm not thinking like that. Like, we should shove senior citizens in front of buses or anything. But, like, you know, if we're talking about doing this for 2 years, we need to figure out a way to run the economy while we're going to do it. And so I'm glad that people are moving forward and putting plans together to.
Oop. You freeze? Can I interject?
The economy just paused, Andrew Heaton.
Oh no.
Go ahead.
I kind of agree. I do agree with Andrew. We do need to have a discussion about the economy, because at the end of the day, that is also going to hurt lots and lots of Americans. However, I don't know why the jump is to let's just reopen it. Blah, blah, blah. Like, has to be other things we can discuss. And I am kind of tired of huge swaths of working class Americans being duped by people in power, because it's like, well, they could be doing so much more for you rather than just, put yourselves back at risk, go back to work. No, like, why is that always? I'm just frustrated, very frustrated.
That's how power works, is duping mass amounts of people. That's very much the nature of power.
It's like, dupe me once, shame on you. Dupe me twice, shame on me. Like, do these people not have dating lives? I mean, not to piggyback on Andrew's theme here, but I mean, come on.
Well, I just think it's interesting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Shriya.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just think it's interesting that people are like, we need to talk about the economy. Let's reopen it. But there are people who want to have a very serious conversation about the economy, and it centers around hazard pay. And we're just completely overlooking that because it's just not important. And so really we're just cherry picking the
Yeah.
economy conversations.
I don't think most of the economic conversations are just red light, green light, though, are they? I mean, most of the stuff that I've read is about unrolling it in stages where we go, okay, restaurants can open, but they can only have 10 people in at one time. You can go back to having social groups, but you can't have more than 20 people. So it's not like they're just going to flip a switch and everything goes back to normal. Like there will be an intermediate stage to try and allow it to come back, but also continue to flatten the curve.
Yeah, but there's weird stuff about that, because if you dive into this this 3-phase program that the administration put out, and I understand they got buy-in from like the professionals there, Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci, but in the first phase they are talking about large gatherings, but they put restaurants, which Andrew was just referring to, in the same category as sports events. So in other words, you can have your restaurant, you can have your restaurant open, but have only like say 10 people in it, and you can have your stadium open, but instead of having 50,000, you can only have 25,000. And I'm paraphrasing because this is supposed to be a funny show, but the point
I think it'd be awesome if they opened up a stadium and only let 10 people in. That would be really cool.
Yeah, the weird thing about this is, and what
They're
makes
all the way in the nosebleed.
Yeah, you still have to sit at the back, you fucking peasants.
Yeah, that's right.
what
Not
makes
go
me
nuts.
uncomfortable about this is sports is one of Donald Trump's like major obsessions. And it has been for a long time. He basically helped destroy the USFL because he owned one team. The league sued the NFL over antitrust. While the suit was going on, Trump convinced the other owners to move from being a spring league to go into fall direct competition with the NFL, and surprise, surprise, the whole thing collapsed. Everything went bankrupt because, as Rick Wilson once appropriately said in the most prophetic book title of all time, everything Trump touches dies. Now that's happening literally. He feels that the biggest symbol of America being reopened is going to be sports coming back in the fall. Now he knows that there's no way he's going to be able to get full stadiums, but if he can somehow figure out a way, I don't think it's going to happen myself, but if he can somehow figure out a way to have some kind of football going on in the fall, even if the stadiums aren't filled or anything like that. That is going to be a win that he feels that he can then market to the country, saying, "Hey, we're back. You know, the sports is back. America's coming back. Rah rah."
I don't know a lot about sports, but Robert, as someone who knows more than I do, how does that work in terms of the players renegotiating their contracts? Because if I'm a football player and we've got a pandemic, I don't want to come in any close contact with any of the other players. Like, from a player standpoint,
just playing hazmat suits. That seems like the easiest thing for me. And then the other thing they can do is, we're comedians. We figured out how to do our jobs on Zoom. Come on, step up, football players.
It's like golf is the only thing that can come back.
Yeah, you roll a dice, and you're like, well, you got the ball now.
Golf and tennis.
Golf and tennis. Tennis is the new national sport.
Which means, once again, part of this could be, sports that only white people can play, and Tiger Woods. I've
been trying to play polo on Zoom for a month now. It's very difficult. I have to get a webcam for my horse.
And the Williams sisters, if it's tennis.
First cam.
Webcam for my horse. That's interesting.
GoPro,
also about sports too, Robert, is that this week the president announced his committee to try and help reopen America, which, if I believe, is currently I don't know if it's officially on pause, but they announced it and then sort of stopped out of nowhere. But initially it had NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, who
it had the commissioners of the four sports leagues
and Vince McMahon
and Vince McMahon. And
O.J. Simpson was part of it. Former New Jersey Net Jason Williams, the guy who shot that guy, he's there too.
I'm sorry, O.J. did not make the cut this time.
Oh. Too
What?
late.
What?
Too late, not too soon.
Too late. However, there was an interesting that we may end up. We're going to be talking a little bit about the governor of Florida a little bit later, I think. But there's a Vince McMahon connection involving that as well, where they managed to get the governor of Florida to deem wrestling and MMA stuff as essential workers. So.
Huh?
Yeah. But oh, by the way,
Yeah, that is the greatest face.
It's like you don't have an N95 mask, but you can have an MME wrestler.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's all right. Amanda, you're on vacation. Okay.
That.
Coincidentally, the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, who is one of the worst people in the world, he allowed this right after Linda McMahon, wife of Vince McMahon, and the head of a political PAC.
Former small business administrator for the Trump administration as well. And who once got the Stone Cold Stunner during WrestleMania. Go ahead, Robert.
They pledged that they pledged that the PAC would spend $18 million in Florida in the fall. So people are kind of thinking, that seems a little bit kind of hinky, whatever. And but
it is amazing. You wouldn't expect that from the WWE, an organization that has non-compete clauses and forces their wrestlers to fight while injured.
I know
it's a nightmarish organization, but as John Oliver rightfully put out, as bad as it is, you can always find video footage of Vince McMahon getting the shit beat out of him on live television. So it does make it a little bit better. So sports, yeah. So is it possible? Stay with me here. And Andrew, I agree. Like, I think we should be talking about the economy. I think it seems like everyone is kind of in agreement, like economy and the healthcare recovery, like go hand in hand. Every sane person is in agreement with that. Is it possible that the push we're seeing now from executives and the dozens of people who protested state capitals this week is perhaps not coming from a place that is concerned for safety and health and well-being of others, but just concern of the bottom line? Is that possible?
Is this a trick question?
No,
I don't think that all of the actors in this scenario necessarily have everyone's best interest at heart.
That's fair, as with many scenarios.
As with many scenarios, yeah. Now, I don't know as much about the local protesters, and I don't know everything going on with them. I mean, I just assume that Trump is feckless in whatever he's doing. So I almost automatically discount whatever he's up to, because who knows? It's going to be pro-Trump, whatever that thing is. I think the greater concern for me would really be a logical application of expertise in these matters, right? So if it's a panic state of there's a pandemic, I'm worried, therefore let's just lock everything down and tighten it rather than looking at the data, I don't want to do that. Conversely, if it's the opposite kind of emotional response of I'm getting cabin fever, I hate this, let's just storm the Capitol and go back to our lives as usual, that is likewise a bad thing if it's just coming from that.
Sure.
I think one of the things that will come out of this, and I don't think we're seeing it yet, which is going to be an interesting conversation, is in the same way that when 9/11 happened, we got the TSA, which I think is mostly security performance. I'm very skeptical about the efficacy of the TSA.
You have to bring your own blue shirt, that's for sure.
Yeah. I suspect that things like that might happen, and I'll be more interested in the protests around that. So, for example, let's say that every cell phone in America theoretically has to have a tracking app on it to see whether or not you've come into contact with people in the future. I could see something like that happening, and having a conversation about, are you able to opt out of this technology would be one that's kind of where like civil liberties come in, where I'm more interested.
Yeah, you and I talked about this on your show, Political Orphanage. Download it now.
It was a fun episode, by the way. But Tom, I want to tell you, several people emailed me and they were like, it's so crappy right now. I just enjoyed laughing. Thank you for making me laugh. And that was the episode that you had pitched. So thank you.
You know what they say, Tom Brennan makes several people laugh. But I think we talked about this. I think it is not an all, I am someone who's fairly to the left. I have a little bit of a libertarian-ish streak, maybe just in a slight distrust of government, mainly in that, in my experience, whatever things you give to government, rarely do they give them back. So I do think it's fair to say, like, shields up, have our eyes open in this moment in time.
Sure.
But also fair to say that, like, so far the data seems to imply that staying home is working.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen, around the world what's happened when they're like, all right, it worked. Hong Kong, they're like, it worked, and it resurged. We can go back in time 100 years to the 1918 pandemic. Similarly, like, the resurgence came because they're like, all right, we did it, we're done. So, there's a fair balance to be struck between let's follow these rules and orders and directives from the government. Just keep your eyes open and your shields up.
I agree. And I don't think that, like, I don't take the position that I know several people that are very angry that there are, like, lockdown orders in general, where they're like, the government shouldn't. And I'm like, in the same way that, like, I'm not allowed to hurt other people. If I've got pathogens spewing out of my body, I'm not allowed to hurt people with that. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a legitimate function of government to impose these kind of things.
Also, like, the government's telling you to stay home in lockdown, but it's not like we've got army people marching in the streets. It's not like, it's like we're in our homes, and we're not going to be in our homes forever, because that is not sustainable. And it's like what Andrew said earlier about this GPS tracking thing. That's way more scary. I'd rather just stay home than have an app on my phone. It's like, thank you, Andrew, for bringing that up. That's some science fiction shit. Just stay the fuck home.
They're already using that, though.
Yeah.
I don't want it. Tell me to get rid of it.
Well, I'll walk you through it after.
Our everyday life, our current life is some science fiction. We're living in some kind of cross between Michael Crichton and a very bad Will Smith movie. Pick one.
Name me more than one very bad Will Smith movie. You can't name me more than was it After Earth? Wild Wild West. All right, there's two.
iRobot. We can keep going. We can.
iRobot
there's
is perfectly fine.
I Am Legend.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I like all of them.
It's Andromeda Strain meets I Am Legend. There you go. Thank you.
No, of course, classic pitch that everyone's been waiting for. So let's talk. The experts seem to say that staying home is right, but two doctors this week had some differing opinions. Doctors Phil and Oz.
Don't take advice from a doctor who goes by their first name.
Right. Or is his first name Oz?
No. One is the first name. Mehmet is Oz's.
If it turns out that guy's name is Cornelius Johnson Phil, we have to give him credit.
Yeah.
or a nickname, okay?
Yeah.
First name or nickname.
Well, that was the name of his great-great-grandfather who led the South in the Battle of Manassas. Both of them went on primarily on Fox News, which is a network, to talk about how perhaps we're overreacting. I believe in the case of Dr. Phil, he highlighted how we don't shut down, how many people die from car accidents and smoking, and we don't shut down over that, forgetting the fact that rarely do, car accidents aren't technically contagious, but sure. Again, Phil, though, as I learned earlier today, not currently a doctor. So,
wait, did his license lapse, or what happened?
I guess it lapsed a few years ago. But my experience with Dr. Phil at this point is primarily that my mom watches him. So, as far as I knew, he was just a Texan who yelled at women for an hour. But
can I be Admiral Heaton then? Do I just have to have a TV show and then I get to pick a title?
Yep.
Apparently, that's how it works, Andrew. I say go for it.
Yeah.
Yes. Commodore Heaton sounds like a fun show.
At a minimum, find your nearest nautical themed restaurant, find out whatever programs they have for kids where you can earn points, and then you can say, I am technically an admiral at Bucky's Bucket out in Montauk.
Anybody remember Arthur Treacher's? Wasn't that wasn't there like a
What year was Arthur Treacher's around, Rob?
I think this might have been before my time.
Oh no, I know what you're talking about, I think.
Thank you.
Very nice of you, Amanda.
It only went out of business about 10 years ago. So I think even you were alive then, Tom.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, we were
So
alive then.
hold on. So Tom, can I ask for clarification from everybody here? And I'm only saying I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm merely a Commodore on television.
Yep. Yes. Yep.
But I understand the logic that they just mentioned to that, to the things you brought up of like, the flu happening every year. Now, granted, this is a different kind of situation in that it is more transmissible. It has a higher contact ratio and all those things. I get that. But like the nugget of what they're saying, from what I can tell, is that there is a societal balance between what we do and the potential death rate of it. And like that kind of basic thing of like, we could, I think they brought up the speed limit of, if everybody drove 15 miles an hour in the country, you couldn't drive any faster than that, we'd have less deaths. So I like that core insight. I don't really have a problem with.
Well, the thing with that core insight, I agree with you, Andrew. Again, agreeing with Andrew here. But however, we have things to balance that risk of death. Like in cars, you have seatbelts. We do have speed limits. With what was the other thing they brought up? The
smoking, maybe pools.
We've got Surgeon General warnings. We've got bans on smoking in restaurants. We've got, you can't sell cigarettes to kids. We don't have anything to combat COVID. We don't have a therapy. We don't have a vaccine. Like the only thing we have right now is social distancing. And that's our Surgeon General's warning. That's our seatbelt. Like if the doctor first name nicknames want to offer up their own balanced counterpart, I'm welcome to hear it, but I don't think they have one.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of it that way.
How come you haven't been taking your hydrochloroquine? That's it. If you have that, I mean, you darn liberals just don't want to take these things that could ward this stuff off, and that's your own fault. And that's, darn it, liberate the hydrochloroquine.
Well, this is. I'm glad you brought this up because I've wanted to talk about this for a few weeks, and now I know how to pronounce it. First of all, hydrochloroquine. But if I understand, this is a drug that has
Erythromycin. That's the other part. You have to take them together.
This is a drug that the president had said. Many people are saying it helps. Dr. Oz was pitching it. Correct? Is that where he kind of came into the radar this week, or is it someone else? Or he was saying he was alluding to it as being a potential treatment.
Dr. Oz was talking about if we do reopen at a certain amount of time and schools are open, the fatality rate may only be about 2 or 3%.
Right.
But he says
think of a public school with tens of thousands of kids. Think about what 2 or 3% of that is.
And full well, it's not going to be the worst 2 or 3%. It's not going to. It's not going to be that jerk jock that was always like stuffing you in the locker. It's not going to be him. It's going to be the nice little kid who was helping you with your homework. I mean, that's
We also know that fatality rates of kids in schools doesn't count for much in this country.
That's well, yeah. That has not stopped people so far. Good point. So then I guess
because the kids are not getting their shots from vaccines; they're just getting shots. So that's. No school shootings for the last 6 weeks. So
I want to point out here, Robert George.
Good for gun crime and dogs.
Yeah, Robert George, you are a man who is uncomfortable using the F word in social media, but you are willing to make jokes about kids getting shot.
I'm a man of many multitudes, Tom Brennan.
May I backtrack a moment, Tom, just to go back to Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz?
Of course.
Robert, have you worked in television? I don't know. But
here, yes.
Okay. But I worked as a TV writer in primetime television news analysis, and it's a medium that I think should go away. There are smart people in it, but they're always constrained by the medium they're doing. So for example, on one of our shows, even if we made every effort to get on, PhD level experts from a variety of viewpoints, and we have got an 8-minute segment with 4 people, doing the math, you can infer that at most you're gonna get about 2 minutes. And then we're like, hey, how are you gonna fix the Middle East? You got 2 minutes, go. Maybe there are things that are more complex than a 2-minute soundbite, and television lends itself to soundbites. So when we get into things that are complex, when we get into things that are nuanced, it doesn't work well. What it works well on is flashy and conflict and drama. Like, it's really good for that. It's not very good for actually transmitting information in a nuanced manner.
One thing I will point out that could be considered a you don't want to say there's anything nice that's actually come out of this horrible thing that we're going through, is that suddenly a lot of the talking heads that are on TV now are people that look a lot like Sriya. I mean, it seems to me there have been like
Gorgeous.
There have been more like, you know, people of a South Asian kind of background than since other than like the ESPN spelling bee. You really have all of these like doctors, these doctors, Indian doctors and so forth, that said, oh, these are really smart people. We can actually like listen to them, and you kind of realize these people have been around all this time, but it took a freaking pandemic for them to actually make it to TV. So that has slightly improved the IQ of people showing up. I mean, we're talking Fox aside, but you know.
Shriya, you were invoked. I give you the floor.
South Asian elders are really having their moment in the spotlight right now, because for years, not even years, generations, they have been pushing us to become doctors, and now they just got your "see, this is why" moment, and so shout out to them. I went to art school. I have nothing. I literally have nothing to contribute.
You still become a doctor on Fox, Sriya.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, you put a lab coat on and just walk down to Fox studio. They'll put you on.
I could fool them.
You could be a doctor on this show, Dr. Shriya. We've got an animal. We've got a doctor.
Thank you.
I'd like to point out,
and you've got a doctor who goes by their first name.
Yeah. Anyway, Andrew's right. Shows where 5 people sit in boxes and talk about things they don't know what they're talking about are bad for America.
But Tom, I think we forgot the link that brings Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz together. Speaking of people known by their first name.
Oh, go out on that limb, Robert. Create that enemyship.
I mean,
it was nice knowing you.
There's a question that has to be raised here. Is Oprah Winfrey history's greatest monster? I mean,
first of all, I don't think so. However,
oh no,
Andrew Heaton's just getting out of here.
We're all gonna die. Robert just signed all of our death warrants.
Robert, I respect you, and I will let you have the floor. Oprah, who I assume has ears everywhere, I think is great.
Well, first of all, Oprah's minions are not as powerful as the Beehive, so it's not. I didn't say anything about Beyonce, so we're only talking Oprah here.
Well, sure.
We don't.
What is
Oprah gave Dr. Phil a platform, gave Dr. Oz a platform. She gave Marianne Williamson a big platform. One of the biggest anti-vaxxers out there. And speaking of anti-vaxxers, when we were researching this particular topic, I also realized that she'd also helped promote Jenny McCarthy. So I mean, there's kind of a lot. There's a lot of sketchy folks that Oprah put on, and we never thought about them all at the same time, except at this point when the world is ending, and we're kind of thinking, Oprah, do you got some explaining to do?
Well, and I won't even, like, without 100% pinning this on Oprah Winfrey for the entire culture of TV, like, this goes to Andrew's point, which is, you know, in the last 2 decades, cable news has moved a little bit away from news to a sort of hybrid of news and these talk shows. And it has made these talk shows a little more credible, which is to say, like, Oprah Winfrey has a large influence and audience and bears some responsibility for that. But also, like, to her credit, the show has always been just a lifestyle show. And, you know, like, there's certain credibility those people have, but certain credibility that, as much credibility as a lifestyle show has. We have watched TV evolve to a place where news is also a lifestyle show. And so now, like, the line between the two is blurred. And we listen to the people who are on TV.
We actually forgot somebody who was not part of Oprah's crew, but also fits into this Dr. One Name person.
Sure.
A week and a half ago, Dr. Drew, who.
Oh, right. What did he do?
He was who came to prominence in like the 90s with Adam Carolla doing like Loveline show. He was also out there kind of pitching this maybe we need to reopen early. And he was having fun. He was also questioning if the numbers on death and infection were right. He ended up doing a kind of a big mea culpa online, but here we go again.
I will say there's one named doctor I will always stand, and that is Dr. Ruth.
She's been quietly.
Pimple, where's Dr. Pimple Popper?
Oh, Dr. Pimple Popper too.
Yeah,
Dr. Pimple Popper. Yeah.
She's got to come out hard against this, against reopening.
I don't know how we can let how the messy men are being blamed on the woman per se.
Oh, yes.
Because they are their own people. Also, Oprah, yes, gave them a platform, but Oprah also had a production team, and there was a network, and they also take equal responsibility. And Oprah did hold herself accountable to an extent, right? Like when they were popular, she gave them a platform. She was not the only one to do so. And, when there was when Jenny McCarthy was on her show, right? Like being anti-vax was very much a thing in the cultural zeitgeist at the moment. So it made sense from a television point of view, which is still a yucky point of view, but still it made a business sense to have her on the show. And then when pushback came and the science around it was debunked and whatever, she wasn't on her show anymore. Oprah didn't go on and be sorry for having Jenny on my show, but she also didn't have her on her show anymore. And now I think the blame is very much wholeheartedly on the networks who are bringing Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz from almost oblivion, obscurity, they weren't really relevant until someone was we have no one else, just call it Phil and see if he's free right now. And so, yeah, I don't know. I feel conflicted about making Oprah take the full blame.
Well, I do want to make this point though as a slight pushback. First of all, I did want to balance this out and pointing out that I was blaming Oprah not just for Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz, but I was also blaming her for Marianne Williamson and Jenny McCarthy. So I was blaming her both genders. So that's number one. Number two,
Oprah, you're growing a lot in this quarantine.
Number two, Oprah, few people had really heard about Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz until she gave them that platform. And then Dr. Phil got his show after he appeared on Oprah, and Dr. Oz got his show after doing Oprah. So she did elevate the, they were sort of known, they had to be sort of known to get her attention. So, that's true. But she did give them a platform, which then took them to a higher level. So that's my, and by the way, I'm being somewhat tongue in cheek because I'm not, but I do think it is interesting that the common link of some of these somewhat sketchy people is the woman who for a while was the most popular entertainer in the world, and look where we are right now.
I'm with Sriya on this one. I think if in theory Fox puts Kid Rock on the network to give us medical advice, I'm not going to hold rap accountable for or whatever hip hop. I don't know what he worked in, but
he was a welder, I think.
Was he a welder?
No,
the welding consortium does not get the ire for that. I think that there's a difference between a lifestyle show that you bring up, Tom. I think that's fine to put people on a lifestyle show. I think the problem is when you're either creating a medium which is destructive in and of itself, or you're putting people that aren't experts in the role of an expert, and they're dispensing bad advice. So if Dr. Phil's job is to yell at Texan women or whatever, but all right, I'm probably not going to watch that. I don't think it's going to have a big effect in terms of giving bad epidemiology out there. But if you start, slapping a lab coat on people and going, hey, this is an expert because he's just better at talking than the actual doctor we know, then that's the problem.
I think that's it's a fair point. And I Robert, because this already came up, I'm not going to push back with my let's blame Oprah in Trump's America pushback. The country has made it clear that on some level we like TV stars in this country. We like people who are on TV, and we'll listen to them.
We do until they get on Twitter and sing Imagine.
That's true. Yeah, once they start singing songs at us, then we hate them.
Did y'all see Madonna's weird spacey video when she was in the bathtub?
No.
Oh, she's just.
How did I miss that one?
She's in a bathtub with rose petals, and she's just like spacey staring. And there's piano music, and she's going, "It doesn't care if you're rich or poor. It doesn't matter if you're famous." Like, and I'm like, who's filming this? Does she like have a like? Yeah, it's very strange. Yeah.
She has a live-in crew with her at all times.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I want my celebrities just doing what they should be doing, which is in the White House, driving our economy into a ditch and tweeting vague threats and inciting new civil wars. I think we're going to leave it there. And there's one more topic. I guess we talked very quickly about if we'd like. Democratic primary seems to have officially ended as of this week, with Joe Biden winning. Bernie Sanders came out to endorse him, then Barack Obama, then Elizabeth Warren. All he needs now, as Robert George rightly pointed out, are, I think, Marianne Williamson and
Bill de Blasio.
We'll see, Gabbard.
Interesting. To endorse, and they'll have all of the luminaries of the party. So, so thoughts on the end of this primary? We started. What's that?
Sorry, Tom Steyer. He's
Tom
also.
Steyer. Yeah, let's go, Tom Steyer, please. So we're, thoughts on the end of the primary.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say.
That's how we all feel.
Tom and I watched the 3rd episode of Mrs. America last night, and I made the realization in my head, and I did the math. My grandmother was close to the age I am now in 1972 when Shirley Chisholm ran. That I am now in 2020, and we still don't have a Madam President. And I would say that I'm all for party unity, but I'm just sad. Me personally, I'm just sad, and nothing will take away that sadness. I'm ready to do whatever. I'll vote for whoever to get Trump out of the White House, but nothing will remove my deep well of sadness. To bring it down, guys.
If you had somebody like I don't know, Susan Collins out of Maine, who's a sort of moderate Republican, would you be in favor of her?
No, we're talking about visionaries, Andrew. And you're an admiral.
I just want to be clear this. Democratic women, but nobody else.
You're not keeping your Commodore-ship with that attitude, pal. But I think that's interesting. You bring that up, and we are seeing Joe Biden has sort of is clearly making moves. Has been making moves all end of the primary long to speak to all of these concerns. He's committed to picking a woman as his vice presidential running mate. He already has sort of changed his Medicare plans to be. It's not Medicare for all, but he's walking that direction, at least lowering the age of Medicare. He's also building, I think, joint unity committees with the Sanders campaign to develop the platform. You can see him sort of doing, it's almost like a transparent, what did every one of these 20 people want? All right, we'll figure out a way to give it to all.
Well, you know what I think is actually what interesting, and I don't think this has really been commented on enough. Or as the old saying goes, everything has been said, but not everything has been said by me. When Biden made what is rather remarkable, and because everything else was going on, it didn't become like the controversy of the moment as it otherwise would have. When he made the statement. I'm going to pick a female running mate. Suddenly everybody was forced to do a real deep dive as to who the options would be, and you ended up going much deeper into analyzing who all of these people would be than you normally would have. If somebody said, "Well, I'm just going to pick the best person, and then somebody would then just run off pro forma 3 or 4, 2 or 3 female candidates. Instead, they started going, okay, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, but then you started going further. You went to Val Demings, who was one of the House impeachment managers, Senator Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin, Tammy Duckworth. Suddenly, like you suddenly Stacey Abrams, who I'm frankly not a fan of, but you suddenly realize, yes, even if you just say I'm going to pick a woman, there's a much deeper well than you normally would have been thinking of if you just said, oh, I'll just do two or three. So I think it's been an interesting experiment when people are actually forced out of their particular comfort zone and start like looking at the vast qualities that one whole gender brings to the table.
Yeah, it's true. This is the first time, I think, in presidential history where only one gender is being considered for the vice presidency. Oh, wait, no. I can think of about 100 years or so where the one gender was the only one considered.
That's right, Tom. I'm glad you corrected yourself.
Can I just say, I was so dead wrong about Biden this whole time. I thought Biden was going to go down like a sack of bricks very early on.
Right. Instead, he soared like a flying sack of bricks.
He soared like a flying sack of bricks. Like I was like if that man had a crest, it would be a guy stepping on a rake. I thought
Sideshow Bob in it.
Flowed by now, and I'm amazed he didn't.
Andrew, let me tell you this. Let me go back.
A long way to go.
Let me go back 4 years when there was one person who happens to be on this this Zoomcast right now who made the prediction that when Donald Trump said about John McCain that I prefer my heroes who weren't captured. One person on this Zoomcast said this is the beginning of the end of the Trump campaign. And look, and here we are.
Sriya?
Robert, wasn't
It was Sriya.
It was Robert.
That was Robert.
This guy right.
And
I don't have the gift of foresight.
I maintain that Robert is 100% right, but only because everything is the beginning of the end of something, because we are all mortals and doomed to die. Any other thoughts, Sriya? Thoughts on the end of the Democratic primary before we move on?
I grossly underestimated how far a good pair of veneers will get you.
Guy's got a good smile. You got to give it to him.
The brutal tooth.
I am just so underwhelmed by.
Can I do a straw poll real quick? Just
wherever I need to.
Can I do a straw poll real quick? Because I'm intrigued by this in terms of having the first woman president and that kind of thing. It would be good, but it's a lower priority to me than policies. Policies would be my top thing. Am I right in thinking that you all would really like to have a lady president? However, you would still rank that below the vision or you'd still rather have I don't know Bernie than Amy Klobuchar?
I think it's an error to assume that we just vote by gender. We've just had a lot of options of women who came with incredible policies.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And I'm not trying to castigate you. I'm just trying to clear. I just, for my own purposes, I want to get the impression of where your priorities are.
Well, I see, Andrew, I consider it more of like we don't have to be limited in choosing between gender and policy because we have a field deep enough. Like Robert was saying earlier, like we are living in a time where there is a depth to the amount of people being picked for vice presidential consideration. And I feel like that it can also be applied to a presidential field, and that there are obstacles in the way to that. We are limiting ourselves by thinking in a binary of gender versus policy. And it makes me sad, quite frankly.
Amanda, let me ask you the question. Let me ask the question in a slightly different way. In 2024, if Nikki Haley is the Republican nominee, and Gavin Newsom from California is the Democratic nominee, how would you vote?
I'm voting for the Democratic nominee, Robert. I'm not going to vote for a Republican. Because here's the thing: my preference on wanting a female president is ranked highly with my reproductive rights. And there is one party that has my reproductive rights in their protection zone, and there is one party that does not. So
you also can never trust a woman who shortened their name from Namrata to Nikki.
There you go. Thank you, Sriya.
You and Andrew, in a sense, are on the same page because you're actually saying that the policy is above the gender.
Yeah, I think the tiebreaker seems to be policy.
Shreya, I wasn't sure if you wanted to jump in there with one point.
I mean,
I mean, I think Amanda and I.
Well, because they're equal because like Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, in my mind, had very similar policies and very similar platforms. The tiebreaker there was gender. I was going to vote in the New York primary for Elizabeth Warren because I wanted a Madam President, not another male candidate.
Bernie versus Klobuchar, you would have gone for Klobuchar?
Yes.
Okay. So like, within the Democratic Party, gender's the highest, but if it were like Sarah Palin versus Bernie, you'd go for Bernie.
God, fuck Sarah Palin.
Of course.
I do a lovely impression of her, and I'm glad that she gave me that. In fact, I'm not glad, but, fuck her, don't you know?
But I think to that point, like an interesting thing to look back when you look back in this Democratic field. Let's say only the women who ran in this Democratic field had run, which is been Harris, Warren, Klobuchar, Gillibrand, Tulsi Gabbard, and let's throw Marianne Williamson in there. If you only,
that's a pretty wide variety of candidates.
It still would have been one of the most ideologically diverse fields that the Democratic Party had if you only had those 6 candidates. And I think that's an interesting thing to say. Like, I think that's why it seems to me where like that heartbreak's coming from is the fact that like, as opposed to previous years where like, is it gender? Is it policy? Like basically women across the spectrum of the left all had someone to vote for.
Also, can I interject also in the Bernie, when you asked me Andrew Bernie versus Klobuchar, like I also take into consideration men get a leg up. Like in that situation, if it's just those two, like I know the rest of America is going to vote for the guy. So I'm going to help out what I perceive as the underdog candidate, in my opinion.
Okay.
That's interesting because one could argue that Klobuchar is actually one of those like, this isn't the right term. She's not a pro-life Democrat, but like she is a bit further in terms of the reproductive rights oriented candidate that people like you and I would want. So I actually would probably vote for Bernie just because he has made a much more pronounced commitment to protecting those rights.
Yeah. I don't trust men.
It's a fair point. And we live together. With that, let's pivot to the last question. We'll call it a day. I gave everyone a little bit of a task to give the audience something to read or watch or listen to or do when you're cooped up inside. I'll give you all a few minutes to think about my suggestion this week. I'm going to suggest the Flophouse podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts on the Maximum Fun Network. It's a podcast where a group of comedians talk about a bad movie after watching it. And I'm going to just say quickly about a thing that I happen to know one of the co-hosts, Elliot Kalin, pretty well. But a thing I really love about that show, for a show that is essentially, as they would say, like 3 white guys talking about a movie, I think they go out of their way to be really thoughtful and inclusive about how they talk about bad movies, and and prove that you can still be really funny and really edgy while still being that thoughtful. I recommend it. Flophouse at Maximum Fun.
I don't trust white guys.
Fair enough.
I support that, Robert.
You were a Republican,
you.
So I can't blame you. As a Republican, you would know best. Shreya, go ahead. What do you think people should read, watch, or do while they're cooped up?
I have been reading a collection of essays by Gia Tolentino, who I love to follow on Twitter. She's a New Yorker staff writer, and her book is called Trick Mirror. They're just really fantastic essays, very well written, very funny, very insightful. And if you want to turn your brain off before the 90 days, 90 Day Fiance. Before the 90 days. Cannot recommend it enough. Just riveting human drama.
Also a great show about social distancing, 90 Day Fiance.
Yes.
Amanda, I pulled you into this show last minute, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's too late. I am something to read, watch, or do while people are inside.
I started binging Dr. Pimple Popper. Someone brought her up earlier. I'm fascinated. I like that weird medical shit. Got to get my lipoma fix.
Very nice. Andrew Heaton, something for the folks to read, watch.
I have embarked on a quest to try and see a zombie film from every country that makes zombie films.
Ooh.
And this is my way of checking out foreign cinema. And this is going to sound terrible, but I swear it's actually a really good film. There's a Quebecois zombie film called Ravenous, which is about lots of woodland, rural Quebecois French Canadians fighting zombies. And I thought it was really well written and really well acted, and I enjoyed it. And I find, for some reason, zombie films strangely comforting during quarantine.
I guess we watched Stephen King's The Stand TV miniseries when this started. Weirdly comforting. Comforting show. Have you gotten to the Italian film Zombie yet?
I have not.
All right. It's a good one. Watch it. There's a zombie shark.
Okay.
And finally, Robert George, close us out with your recommendation of something to read, watch, do, etc. inside.
Well, Amanda actually stole a little bit of my thunder earlier on when she mentioned Mrs. America, which is on FX but is also streaming. The first 3 episodes are streaming on Hulu, and I think it's on every Wednesday afterwards because there's a total of nine episodes. It's a really good snapshot of the early 1970s and arguably the moment when the culture changed, where in a sense the 1960s ended and what would end up becoming the conservative backlash against some of those cultural changes from the 1960s began. Kate Blanchett is like amazing as Phyllis Schlafly. And I mean, it's obviously a political show, but it's one that I think conservatives and liberals can watch, and they'll get different things out of it. But I think the performances are great. Kate Blanchett is Phyllis Schlafly, Rose Byrne is Gloria Steinem, so it's
Who's Duba is Shirley Chisholm.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I'm drawing a blank on the actress's name, the actress there. Check out Mrs. America. Thumbs up.
Thank you very much, Robert. And that is it for our show today. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you very much, Sriya Sarkar, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew Heaton, for joining us from deep space.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda Nicastro, for pitching in last minute and joining us. Please enjoy Florida. Be safe.
Stay away from the.
Thank you, Robert George, as always, for being with us. And also, real quick thanks to our friends Kevin Scott for creating the animation at the opening of the show, Joanne Harris for creating the music, Declan Shalvey, George Bellaire for creating the Electoral Dysfunction Eagle, and thank you to my buddy, my pal, Ned Thorne for helping me put these together. Now, as a special treat, I'm going to send you down to Houston, Texas, where singer, songwriter, and my brother-in-law, Doug Ankenman, has a special musical treat for us. Ned Thorne, star wipe us to the Lone Star State.
Good morning from Houston, Texas. Esteemed panelists of Electoral Dysfunction, this is Doug Starwipe, and I'd rather die than listen to a white guy play an acoustic guitar. But I was asked by Tom to do a song for you guys, and that's what I'm gonna do. So without further ado, here we go. Just a couple of It's on Sunday. It's a party. The cops came to stop us. The cops that won't stop us. Cops that can't stop us. They think that they know what makes us grow. They're just chasing a smoke screen, and I bet they'll blow. When the time comes for the truth to come through, they won't know what hit them, they won't know what to do. I said no, they won't. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. We're gonna bring it to you. We're gonna tie up your shoes. We never lose. Oh my God, it's a party. It's on Sunday. It's a party. Have a nice weekend.